Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me as always. Really excited to bring back this year special guest, Dane Brugler of The Athletic, one of the best in the business for all things draft content. Dane, welcome back to the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast.
Hey, morning, Paul. How are you?
Doing well. Looking forward. I just was reading through right before you hopped on your newly released top 50. So definitely some things that I look forward to kind of chatting to you about, the offensive skill positions here, which is where we kind of focus our attention here at Saturday Sunday, but a lot to kind of get into. So let's jump right into it. This quarterback class, it's not what we just had, but I think it's more intriguing than maybe the general consensus is. So maybe some thoughts on the top of the quarterback board in terms of what you saw so far in your summer scouting as we kind of, get ready to kick off the college football season.
Yeah, and maybe it's fresh off a quarterback class where we saw 6 go in the top 12. But watching these quarterbacks this summer, none of them really blew me away in terms of, okay, these are high-end tools. These are a package of skills that will translate to being a high-end NFL quarterback. Now, we've seen in the past guys get better in their final year in college. Jaden Daniels last year. Can Carson Beck from Georgia take that next step? Quinn Ewers. You have to remember that this is basically him. Yes, he's a redshirt junior, but in reality, it's like him going into his junior year. He skipped his senior year of high school, didn't play at all that first year at Ohio State. This is his third year now in that Steve Sarkisian offense. What will Quinn Ewers look like? And there's a good chance it might not look like the guy we saw last year because it'll be better. There'll be improvements. Shedeur Sanders is clearly talented. There's not. I don't think there's much of a talent issue there. Does he need to be more efficient with his decision making and some of the things he does in the pocket? Absolutely. But he's a really poised athlete. He knows how to play the position. A lot of times last year, because that offensive line was such an issue, he had to make things right, and he did it more often than a lot of these other quarterbacks were asked to do. And that's what you love to see. So can he, the interview process will be a big thing for him as we go through this season, and then the draft process, just to make sure, it's an intangible position, and teams have to be 100% confident he has what it takes to lead an NFL franchise. So those would be my top 3 guys, and then that's when you get to maybe the high upside quarterbacks, the guys that could emerge as being legit first rounders, guys like Connor Wegman from Texas A&M, former 5-star guy, dual sport athlete in high school, big time baseball player, goes to A&M, doesn't play as much as a freshman. Last year becomes a starter, then he gets hurt after 4 games. But what he showed in the 4 games was really promising. So, okay, once he gets back on the field now, new coaching staff, Colin Klein now, former quarterback, he takes over the play calling. What's that going to look like for Connor Wegman? Drew Aller from Penn State, another 5-star guy. All the talent in the world. If you're going to create a quarterback, this is kind of what it looks like. He's big, he's athletic, he has an arm to make all the throws. So he has all the tools, but can he take the necessary developments from a mental standpoint and just understanding, what he needs to do with the football, the game slowing down for him? Will that show in his play this year for Penn State? So this is a quarterback class that at this point in the season, or in this point in the calendar, not going to wow anybody, or at least didn't wow me. But will that change a month from now, 3 months from now? I certainly hope so, because the draft's a lot more fun when we have these quarterbacks at the top to debate. But right now, I didn't see anybody with a skill set that screamed, no doubt about it, top 10 pick.
Yeah, and I want to circle back a second to Carson Beck, because I think he's an interesting prospect. But how did the NFL views him? I think because when you look at a guy like Carson Beck, I don't know if you saw it a little bit differently, but like I look at him and I see like somewhere if he hits his ceiling, the Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and at the upper, maybe Matt Ryan. I don't know if there's more athleticism that maybe I just didn't see in him. Like, does the NFL view that type of player at the same level that they once upon did? And like, if he would have declared this year, because there was some rumblings, right, that he maybe could have declared, do you think he would have been pushed up? Do you think maybe he would have, we saw Michael Penix go a lot higher than I think we thought.
Yeah.
We saw Bo Nix go a lot higher. Do you think he would have maybe pushed one of those guys down the board and went above them? Or do you think he would have been clearly behind Penix and Nix?
I think it would have been split between teams. I think some teams would have preferred him over a Penix and Nix. Other teams would have leaned towards the experience that those two guys offer. I mean, Bo Nix had 61 starts in college. I mean, what Bo Nix is. He's ready for the NFL, and I think that really appealed to Sean Payton and the Broncos. Whereas a guy like Carson Beck was coming off 1 year as a starter, and that's always a little bit of a wild card when you have a 1 year starter at quarterback going to the NFL. Is he truly ready? What should realistic expectations be? So I do think opinions would have been split. Now, talking to scouts this summer about Carson Beck, they say a lot of good things, but they don't say a lot of there's just not a wow factor there. Now, when you have a Brock Bowers, you have Lad McConkey last year, can really rely upon those guys, which Carson Beck did. Passing over the middle of the field, he was outstanding, but he had those two inside guys that he could really lean on. This year, where you won't have those two guys now in the NFL, can he win more on the outside, throwing to his receivers? Can he develop that chemistry that's needed to put up points? But this is a Georgia offense that's probably going to rely on the run game quite a bit. They're not going to put Carson Beck in position where he's going to have to throw it 50 times a game, win, and put everything on his shoulders. So I just don't know if he has the wow factor that a lot of teams are looking for, or a team's going to look at him as a Kenny Pickett, where he's kind of solid. He doesn't have a glaring weakness in his game. He's solid across the board, but maybe doesn't elevate to great in any one area. I do think that I was impressed by the way he progressed throughout the year. I mean, I think he got better and better and better with every game. You saw that once he got that experience, it's like, okay, I saw that coverage. Okay, I clocked it. I've got it in my memory bank. Or I can't make this throw, or okay, this is open when they do this and I do that. So I think that when he started to see everything play out on the field, he was able to log that in his mind. And so I'm really excited to see him this year. What does he look like? They've got some tough opponents on that Georgia schedule, so there will be some good matchups to watch from a scouting perspective. And so for Carson Beck, right now, he's the favorite to be the first quarterback drafted in April, but it's not one of those cases where he's a no doubt about it top 10 pick.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And last quarterback question, you talked about a couple of the developmental guys before, Connor Wegman, Drew Allar. I think two other guys that the physical traits are also intriguing. I just kind of want to see if you think they maybe could develop and refine a little bit more. Is Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. And then some people are very intrigued with Donovan Smith out of Houston. So maybe some quick thoughts on, do you see a path for any of those guys to maybe develop and take that next step and take that physical traits and that athletic ability that they obviously have and translate into a more well-rounded game that maybe could potentially lead to like a top 50 pick?
Yeah, and look, there are other guys we talk about too that fall in that category of you've seen flashes and you're excited about maybe what could be this year with more consistency. Byron Brown at South Florida is one of those guys. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, Kyron Drones, Virginia Tech. So there are quite a few of these guys that I think could emerge. And Jaden Daniels at this point last year was a third, fourth round pick. He ends up going number 2 overall. So, we're not going to have a Jaden Daniels every year, but there could be someone that ascends this year in their final year. You mentioned Donovan Smith. I mean, he's built well, 6'4". I mean, he's right around 240 pounds. He's a big kid.
Yeah, he almost
What he
reminds
did,
me of Dante Culpepper way back when, just like the build and the frame.
Sure, yeah. I mean, he is a big kid and big hands. I mean, he's over 10-inch hands. So I'm excited to see what he can do for Houston this year. With Milroe, tell you it's interesting. This is the first top 50 I've ever done. I mean, been doing this 15 years. First top 50 I've ever done that did not include an Alabama player. That's just crazy. I mean, I've never done a top 50 ever, whether it's preseason, midseason, final. I've never done one that did not include one Alabama player, but that's where we are right now. Now, Jalen Milroe could absolutely get there by the time midseason, by the time we get to the end of the draft process. he has so much ability. And another guy that showed progression last year, got better. It started pretty rough. The bar was set pretty low, but give him credit. He got better as the season went on. Now Kalen DeBoer's coming in there. We saw what he has done with his offenses in the past. What will that mean for Milroe and his development? What offensive skill players are going to step up and help the quarterback? Isaiah Bond was one of the top receivers. He transfers to Texas. It's not like Alabama's not without talent. Talent is absolutely there. Can they get the consistency that the quarterback needs to elevate him as a prospect? That'll be something we watch closely.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to kind of progress and watch these guys, see if any of them could take that next step and make it a little bit more of an intriguing quarterback class. Let's spin this to where I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue is the running back class. I just finished my running back watching and evals, just recently, and this is a pretty top heavy, star studded, but deep class as well. Maybe let's start with the two Ohio State guys, Travion Henderson, who I feel like we've been talking about for a while, still back in college, and then the transfer Quinshon Judkins. I feel like from what I've seen out there, Quinshon Judkins has a lot of big fans that put him at the tippy top. You like him. I know in your running back rankings that you had him at 4. Is there some characteristics of Judkins that is maybe for you holding him slightly back from being the top 1 or 2 running back in this class? And then some thoughts about Travion Henderson, what he has to do to maybe get back to the form that we thought he was going to show and draft capital that we thought he might have, just a year or 2 ago.
Yeah, and I like Judkins a lot. I mean, he runs angry. He has balance. He finds ways to stay on his feet. You just look at what he did in the SEC the last 2 years, forcing missed tackles, what he did after contact. So there's no doubt about it. I think going to Ohio State, he is going to be able to find production with that offensive line. As a prospect, I do like him. He just missed my top 50. Doesn't have that breakaway speed that you kind of want in as you project these guys forward. You want guys that can create those explosive plays. Judkins doesn't have that breakaway speed, which bothers me a little bit. And then I just need to see better third down consistency. I could throw on the tape where he's catching passes. He just wasn't asked to do it a lot. I can throw on the tape and show where he's made a few good blocks, but it's all the negative blocks in pass pro that bothered me, that stuck with me. So consistency on third down and just showing that he could be more of a big play threat would, for me, get him in the top 50. But he's right there. I mean, this is a guy that can start in the NFL and be a really good player. Travion Henderson, he has some of those that big play ability because of his open field run style, the speed. Get him on the outside. I mean, he loves to run on the outside. Sometimes to a fault. Sometimes you want to see a little more patience as an inside runner. But when he gets on the outside, good luck because he can take it the distance. So, I mean, hopefully health, that's been an issue for him in the past. He can stay healthy this year. I'm interested to see both these guys in Chip Kelly's scheme. I mean, with him, we've seen him. It's a zone offense, obviously, with Chip Kelly, but the same side inside zone and just the different wrinkles that Chip Kelly likes to use. How will Henderson and Judkins? What will the load share be? How will these guys mesh with the scheme and what they're asked to do? And with Will Howard now in that backfield, so this Ohio State offense on paper is unbelievable. They are deserve to be 1 or 2 in the rankings, but when it all plays out, when they go to Eugene in October to play Oregon, how will it all play out when they need to score probably 40 points to win that game?
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, like, Henderson was the guy that we thought was going to probably come out last year, and we've been talking about him for a while, and if he can put together a year where he shows durability and that big playability again, I think he could easily, move back up draft boards to maybe where we once upon a time thought he was. Before we go to the top of the running back board, I do want to bring up Donovan Edwards because I feel like if we were around a year ago, he was the guy that we thought traits wise and, transitioning to the next level would have probably been the best running back maybe in Michigan in terms of that big playability. Obviously, last year didn't go as well for him individually. Obviously, great team success. So maybe some thoughts on Donovan Edwards, what he has to do to maybe get back to being one of those guys who could be in the mix to be one of the top running backs coming out of college football.
Yeah, and I always had Corum ahead of Edwards, even though Edwards is probably the better athlete. He's can make guys miss. He's got quick feet, more home run ability. The contact balance was unimpressive to me. He would lower his pads in the contact. He just wouldn't break tackles. And so he doesn't have the body power where he's just going to barrel through NFL guys at the next level. He would run into his own blockers at times. That would slow him down. So the lack of contact balance in the way he plays, that really stuck with me. And I thought we saw that a little bit more last year too. He just didn't have the same production that he had as a sophomore, but now he's going to be the guy. And with a new quarterback and really a lot of new faces on offense, Donovan Edwards. I mean, there's going to be a lot put on him to keep that offense going, sustain drives. He has the ability to do it. It's just, can he take his game to that next level where, maybe a lot of people thought he could get, where we're talking about him as a top 50 pick. He's not there right now, in my opinion. But can he get there now as a senior? I mean, he came back for a reason. If the feedback he got from NFL teams, that's why he came back. I mean, that's something that played into his decision. Can he change the narrative this year with a lot of new faces on that offense? Something we'll be watching closely.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of see, post Jim Harbaugh, how Michigan looks this year, and how Donovan Edwards rebounds from last year. Let's go to the top of your running back rankings, and I think it was Bree in the top 35, 36 of your overall top 50 big board. So we're talking about, guys maybe worthy of going in round one or that early round two range where we had, Brees Hall and Kent Walker a couple years back. Ashton Genty out of Boise State, Amario Hampton out of UNC, Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. Maybe some quick thoughts, best trait or characteristic about each of those guys that has you excited to put them that high up in your overall big board.
Yeah, Jinxie's so fun to watch. I mean, he's so hard to tackle. And look, we have to mention playing in the Mountain West, he did not play a lot of uh, above average defenses. And so he was able to pick on some bad defenses. And that's why, he led the FBS with 4.52 yards after contact. That's just crazy. But again, we have to put it in the context with the competition. But still, he has unreal balance. He fights for every yard. He's built low to the ground. And so I think we're going to hear a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew type of comps for a guy like this, because he's short, but he's not small. He's thick. He's well put together. He's athletic. He was offered a lot of money to go elsewhere, upwards of $500,000, $600,000. He decided to pass on the money. He still got paid to stay at Boise State. Some donors stepped up with NIL, but he had a chance to go to, quote unquote, greener pastures. But he looked at what he had in Boise State and said, it's pretty green here. So I'm going to stay put, which was cool to see. They go to Oregon this year, and so what can he do against that Oregon defense that is replacing some guys up front? Can't wait to see that one. Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, 6'1", 215 pounds. He is watching the life in his legs, I think, is the most fun thing about him. He's a taller back, but he can run low. He's got springs in his legs. The cut and accelerate ability is what really stands out for him. And so I just want to see him be a little more physical, finish through contact, because he has a lot of what you look for at the next level in a starting running back. And then a Marion Hampton from North Carolina. No more Drake May, but that Tar Heels offense is still going to be fun to watch because of a Marion Hampton. Really well put together. I mean, he's 5'11", 3/4, 220 pounds. The determination and balance that he runs with is, good God, just get out of, if you're not serious, then get out of his way, because he's going to run right through you. He showed over and over and over again last year on tape that he has that physical aspect, but he also has speed. He also has a lot of the characteristics you see in a smaller back. He just happens to be 220 pounds and can run through you or go around you. So with Hampton, I think there's a lot of skills that stand out. Third down skills, he can catch the ball. Pass pro was awesome. So all three of those guys, like you mentioned, they fit in the top 36 of my top 50, and which was a nice change up from last year. Last year we didn't have a single running back go top 40, and that's just the second time that's ever happened in NFL draft history. So that's not going to be the case this year. We could absolutely have multiple running backs go in the top 40 next April.
Yeah, one last running back I want to bring up that I'm a pretty big fan of, and I'm interested to hear what he has to do to maybe take that next step and move up, into consideration maybe with some of the other backs we've talked about. Is Jaden Ott out of California, obviously great production, big time athleticism and burst and acceleration. What are you looking for him to maybe refine his game or further develop or show to maybe put him up there with the top level running backs that we've discussed?
Yeah, and Ott's a fun player. His calling card is the lateral quickness, right? I mean, he has patience, and then he can make you miss. He keeps his pads square to the line of scrimmage. He's a smart player. I mean, I remember watching the Stanford tape. I believe it was Stanford tape, where he just instead of padding his stats, he went down late in the game because he wanted to kill the clock. Went down to the 1 yard line. So those Cal guys are smart, but he's a team guy. One of my bigger issues with him was a lot of times watching him, his legs would go dead at contact. He's not consistently driving forward once a linebacker squares him up. Doesn't have a ton of power in his run style. So I like Ott. I want to see him be a more physical finisher this season. I think for me, that's what's going to take him to another level.
Yeah, and it's gonna be fun to kind of see if he can keep that production going and then show a little bit more in those areas that you just talked about. Let's turn to the pass catchers. We'll do some wide receivers and then end maybe with a quick tight end. The top of this wide receiver class, I feel like every year we got these wide receivers. We just had an unbelievable class with Marvin Harrison and Neighbors and Rome Odunze, and now we have the next wave of guys coming in. Let's start with Travis Hunter first. From what you've gathered with all do you think the NFL is viewing him more on the offensive side, defensive side? Do you think it's still up in the air? And then if so, wide receiver wise, what is it about his game that intrigues you the most?
Yeah, I think it's very much up in the air because a lot of it's going to come down to his preference. If he really wants to play on one side or the other or both, that you have to keep that in mind when you draft him, because in order to draft him, you're going to draft him in the top 10 picks. He's that good of an athlete. The thing that stands out the most is just how instinctive his ball skills are. I mean, he is a big time athlete. He's over 6 foot. But his instinctive ball skills are just unbelievable, and they really show on offense and defense. Personally, I would love to see him stay at corner because it's harder to find those guys. But you look at everybody, I think most athletes want to be a receiver. They want the ball in their hands. You see who's getting paid in the NFL right now, it's the receivers. So there's a good chance we get to draft time and Travis Hunter, I think he's going to tell scouts he wants to play both, but I think he probably is going to lean towards offense, whereas teams are going to probably lean towards defense where they want to see him, just because, again, it's harder to find guys that are over 6 foot and have the instinctive ball skills and athleticism that he has to offer. But yeah, I want to see him this year just be a little bit better in contested situations. On defense, matching up with bigger receivers. On offense, matching up with some of those crowded catch points. Working in traffic, just being more accessible for his quarterback, helping him out. But like the athlete that he is, I mean, it's hard to not see him not going in the top 10 picks, whether it's a corner, receiver, or both.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to kind of see that Colorado offense this year, and then how that pre-draft process plays out. Do we hear a lot from Hunter and what he prefers? Do we hear a lot from Dion in terms of speaking on behalf of Hunter? It's gonna be fun to follow. At the top, Ted McMillan and Luther Burden. You have them back to back in your wide receiver board. You have them back to back in your overall big board. Two-part question, really. One, do these guys as prospects kind of profile, not stylistically, but just overall, at the player, similar to what we just had with Neighbors and Odunze? Do you think they could be that level of prospect? And how hard is it in general to rank two guys that are very different stylistically, but obviously play the same position, but size, frame, how they win, like just a general, and then you can kind of tie it into those two guys and what you like about them. How hard is it to evaluate those guys and compare them neck and neck when they're so different stylistically?
Yeah, and I'll say that I don't think any of these receivers match up with the top three guys we had last year. I mean, Marvin Harrison obviously was as good as advertised. Neighbors to me was in other draft classes he would have been my number one overall player. He to me Neighbors is that good of a prospect. And then Rome Odunze was just what you want in a professional wide receiver. I mean, he was up there. So sky high on those three guys. But the receivers this year, to me, if you look at Luther Burden, he's probably the closest to a Malik Neighbors type, because he has that explosive ability. He has big play potential. He can work with the ball in his hands and create after the catch. He can win down the field and be a vertical ball winner, because he has speed. He is well put together. I mean, he's 5'11", not the tallest guy, but he's got some muscle on him. He is a physical player. And then when you get him in the open field, that acceleration that he brings is a lot of fun. So he is a big play creator. It'll be interesting that the Missouri offense is going to be good this year. Really, the Missouri team is going to be good this year. They've got a chance to make the 12-team playoff. They'll be in that conversation up until the end. So can Luther Burden, Brady Cook at quarterback, it's a little bit of a roller coaster. He was able to find Burden quite a bit, especially with some of those 20-plus yard plays. But he also, they left a lot of production on the field. So with Burden, I just want to see more consistency between quarterback and receiver, but he has the ingredients to go top 10. With McMillan, not going to run as well, which is obviously not great, not what you want, but his catch radius, his ability with the ball up in the air, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to not fall in love with a receiver like that. He's 6'5", 210 pounds. He doesn't drop the football. Even though he's not going to run a 4.3, he is a really good athlete, both with the body control, but then also with his route acceleration. So these guys at the top, even though they don't match up with the top three receivers drafted last year, still think they're really good prospects and guys that will be considered top 12 potential guys in this class.
Yeah, and every year I feel like we have so many great wide receiver prospects, and they just vary on how high of a prospect they are. And I think these guys are going to be very good in their own right, but maybe comparing them to last year's class, might be doing them a little disservice. Two wide receivers that I think when people kind of comb through your top 50 that they might be surprised just from mainstream consensus of what's out there. Sam Brown, the transfer from Houston to Miami, and then Deion Burks out of Oklahoma. What is it about them that you're intrigued with? Because I don't know if they're as well known to the casual to slightly above casual college football fans right now.
Yeah, Sam Brown, that's a little bit of I'm going to buy low on this guy and see if, maybe I end up being right, because the flashes are there. And I mean, he was in the 40s in my top 50. So not projecting him to be a first round pick, but there are aspects of his game where it's like, oh, wow, that reminds me of Brandon Ayuk at Arizona State. Tall, lanky athlete, big time speed, 6'2", 195 pounds. He can decelerate, accelerate on command, force missed tackles after the catch. Now going to Miami with Cam Ward, I think that has a chance, a real chance, to be one of the more fun quarterback receiver matchups or marriages in the college football season. So I'm excited for that. Sam Brown, it's a little high for him in the rankings, but I'm kind of buying low on that. And then with Deion Burks, another guy, small or short, but not small. He is put together, muscle bound, but he has speed as well. And so the contact balance with him after the catch is a lot of fun. Another Purdue transfer. Purdue lost quite a bit of guys, of their best players, unfortunately for them. But going to that Oklahoma offense, where Oklahoma, it's going to look a little bit different, but they're still going to be one of the best scoring offenses in college football this year. And Burks is going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, those guys are explosive, fun players, the kind of track, and I think they're going to be more well known to the casual college football fan in no time. Last question, tight ends. I'm not going to run through specific names, but just maybe a little overview of the position. Obviously, Colston Loveland, the guy that's getting the most attention, potential round 1 pick, and then after that, I feel like while I sort of was not under in your top 50, I do think there's a lot of other guys that maybe could sneak into the top 100 from that pure pass catching type. The kid from Clemson, Nesbitt, and then you have like Oscar Delp and Mason Taylor and Tyler Warren out of Penn State. So maybe just to close it out today, some thoughts on the tight end group and what maybe could transpire, if we kind of fast forward for the college football season, where these guys can maybe end up.
Yeah, like you said, Loveland's at the top by himself, and it's not quite like a Brock Bowers situation, but it's close. Now, who's going to be step up and be tight end 2 this year? Who is it going to be? Tyler Warren from Penn State absolutely could be that guy. In my preseason rankings, I put Briningstool, the Clemson tight end, up there. He's 6'5" and 5/8, 230 pounds. Really, really nice pass catcher. He can win man to man. He can win the seam. He can win on crossers after the catch. I think that if they get consistency from Klubnik at quarterback, that connection is going to be a very productive one this year for the Tigers. Oscar Delp, what can he do? You know, he's not Brock Bowers, and he won't be asked to be. But what can he do to fill those shoes, both as a route runner and then just his overall role in that Georgia offense? Like we said, Carson Beck loves to throw over the middle of the field. He loves, the Georgia offense as a whole likes to get the ball out quickly. Quick game, not going to really force things to be too complicated. Oscar Delp factors into that. Mason Taylor from LSU, can he step up and be that guy? He's so versatile with what he gives you as a catcher and a blocker. Obviously he has the football bloodlines, with his dad being Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer. But what can as they replace those receivers, they've got receivers ready to step up at LSU, but they still need to add some more firepower. And Taylor, can he be that guy this year?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the tight end class could have some more of those guys emerge and be intriguing prospects there somewhere on day 2. Dane, thank you so much. I feel like we covered a lot of guys in a short amount of time. I greatly appreciate you carving out some time to hop back on the pod with me. I'm sure most of my audience follows you, but please let them know where to find you, where to follow you, anything you want to promote or plug that you got going on.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. At Twitter or on Twitter at DP Brugler. I just released my top 50 on the Athletic. All my work is on the Athletic. This is a fun time with the season starting up, and we get the draft process started, and so it's a really exciting time, and hopefully everybody follows along.
Guys, make sure you're following all of Dane's great work. Anyone who listens to me knows I say it all the time. The Athletic subscription is literally just worth it just for Dane's work and the beast. Come draft season, and then you get all the other great content and providers and writers that they have over there as well. So on behalf of Dane, on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.